There was a group of elderly ladies, way up in their 80s. They were driving down the freeway together when they got pulled up by a police officer. The officer said to the woman driving, "Ma'am, do you realize you are only going 35 miles an hour?" She said, "Yes, officer, I realize that." He said, "Why are you going so slow?" She said, "That is what the sign said." He kind of laughed and said, "No, ma'am, that is the number of the freeway. This is Highway 35. By the way, why are these women so terrified?" She smiled and said, "We just got off Highway 95. Dear friends in Jesus Christ, today is the Vocation Sunday. Vocation Sunday reminds us that the most fundamental call that comes to us in life is the call of the Lord. In the Gospel, Jesus speaks of the shepherd who calls his own sheep one by one and leads them out. He is clearly speaking about himself. Jesus often used images drawn from the life of the people to talk about himself and his message. In the world of Jesus, there were no sheepdogs to help the shepherd in his work with the sheep. The relationship between the shepherd and his sheep was more important and immediate than it is today. The Lord recognized in that relationship between the sheep and the shepherd something of his own relationship to us. As the shepherd calls his sheep one by one, so the Lord calls his followers one by one. He calls us by name. He calls us in a way that respects our individuality and uniqueness in accordance with our own particular nature. The general call of baptism to be the Lord's disciples, which is addressed to us all, is then lived out in a particular ways in response to the Lord's very personal daily call to each one of us. The Lord's concern is not just with the community as a whole, but with the individual who make it up that community. One of the tasks of life for each one of us as the disciple of the Lord is to try and listen to the particular call, what the Lord is addressing to each one of us here and now. Given my very particular circumstances, the relationship and commitment I have at this time, the unique set of gifts and limitations that are mine, what is the Lord is asking of me now? One thing we can be sure of that whatever the Lord's personal call to each one of us is, it will always be a call towards life. In today's gospel, Jesus declares, "I have come so that they may have life and have it to the full." The Lord's personal call to each one of us will always be in harmony with the fundamental purpose of His coming among us. To use another image in that gospel, He is the gate, the gateway to a full life. When the Lord speaks about life to the full, we might be inclined to think only in terms of eternal life, life beyond this earthly life. Yet, the life that the Lord talks about That is not just a future reality, life beyond death. It is also a present reality. Here and now, the Lord wants us to know something of that life to the full, which is our ultimate destiny. It was St. Irenaeus, one of the early theologians of the church, who said that the glory of God is a human person fully alive. The Lord's unique call to each one of us is with a view to our being fully alive. It follows that the Lord will never call us to something that would result in a diminishment of life for ourselves and for others. What is it that makes us fully alive? Elsewhere in the Gospel, Jesus says, "Give it and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap." In other words, it is in giving that we receive. It is in giving life to others that we receive life and become fully alive ourselves. The very personal call that the Lord addresses to each one of us will always be a call to give of ourselves in some way to others, to give life to others by our loving service. In that sense, each of us is called to be shepherd to others. The role of the shepherd was to give life to the flock, to protect them from harm by taking them to the sheepfold for the night and then lead them out of the sheepfold to pasture in the morning. The Lord spoke of himself as the Good Shepherd. The Lord calls each one of us to be a good shepherd in some shape or form to others. Each of us have some responsibility for some little flock of our own, whether our situation in life. The Lord will be calling us to give of ourselves in love to others so as to experience something of that fullness of life He wants for us. For our fundamental call is to be a loving and caring people with a mind through which the Good Shepherd thinks, a heart through which he loves, a voice through which he speaks, and hands through which he works.